So the thing that I think my advice would be, I never studied technique for technique's sake. It was all to serve a purpose. And playing bluegrass as a kid, songs would be...
Ciao ragazzi, oggi siamo qui da Benis Music a Bergamo, un bellissimo negozio, e abbiamo l'onore e il piacere di avere come ospite Andy Wood, che è in Italia per una serie di clinic per presentare la sua nuova Sur, la sua nuova tele, una chitarra strepitosa. E quindi niente, godetevi questo momento, questa intervista, perché è qualcosa di eccezionale. Ciao!
All right, yeah, so I grew up playing a lot of bluegrass and country with my granddad. He taught my cousin, who plays fiddle, and myself a lot of fiddle tunes, old-time East Tennessee, bluegrass, Appalachian, mountain culture type of stuff. And it would be tunes that were similar to this. This is like a bit of Blackberry Blossom. So I'd be playing tunes like that with my granddad, playing on the front porch of our house, the front porch. And I played mandolin. So when I came to electric guitar and started playing electric guitar, I was looking for most of this side of the fretboard, because mandolin is small, and it would be, implying some of those same lines into my playing. And in bluegrass music, there's a lot of dominant 7, a lot of this sound. A lot of licks that would tend to be like, that's an old Bill Monroe tune called Wheelhouse, and I learned to kind of mutate and morph my mandolin picking technique to be kind of fun for electric guitar, because it's not something I was hearing electric guitar players do at the time. A lot of my favorite musicians when I was a young kid and a teenager, they played banjo, they played dobro, they didn't even play guitar. So when I was learning like Bela Fleck things, he's a banjo player, it would be like implementing those style of rolls. So if I slow that down, that's all alternate picked, and that's kind of based out of the idea of the bluegrass thing. So there's 2 G's and a D, so it's 1-1-5. But it starts to roll together. And then I can start accenting the top note, just the 5th, right? Kind of indefinitely. The trick came when I wanted to start playing 1 note per string over 4 strings. I heard Steve Morse do this, in that song. So that worked well for going up the strings and coming back down the strings, like in too many notes. What it didn't work well for is if I had to go up the strings and only retreat maybe 1 string. So like there's a tune that I wrote, and it's Truth and Lie. I can't really remember it. I haven't played it very much. So the front of those arpeggios are all stacked 4s, but the trick is coming back down for the last note. So coming back down was the problem versus the Steve Morse thing where you go up and down it and up and down it. And even people that have had trouble with too many notes, you can apply what I'm about to show you, which is cross pick the first 3 strings and then add the middle finger for the top. So too many notes, that's the basic pattern, right? Add. Now you can kind of break the speed limit a little bit. You can apply it to other things, like I played those major 7s. And there's a song on my second record called For the Queen, and I'm gonna add some delay. But I would take it and it would allow me to play what I refer to as just, this is an Andy thing, but I just call them tall triads. And it's kind of these, where you have a lot of distance between 3, 1, 5, right? So this For the Queen tune, I combined all of that stuff together to write this tune. Kind of combines all the things, and you can use this kind of thing that I invented, or not invented, I didn't invent it, I found. I'm sure somebody beat me to the punch at some moment in time. But I found it, and it was a way for me to play really fast, but also play really pretty, rolling, again, kind of leaning into that banjo thing. There was a really important person in my life musically, was a guy named Brent Mason. And his solo on the Nashville Cats album made me want to start playing electric guitar. I bought that album because I had my favorite banjo players and mandolin players on that record. And that solo kind of led the way. And Brent plays with a thumb pick and then female press-on nails, like cosmetic nails. This and this. So when I alternate pick, he plays thumb, middle, thumb, ring, thumb, middle, thumb, ring. I was convinced I could do that. And that lasted about 7 hours. And then I realized that I'll never be able to play like that. So I had to figure out a way to play his tunes. And he has a really unique style. He's a Nashville recording legend, and he has this style that's very identical. And I wanted to learn to play his tunes. And so I was mutating and using this thing that I found to kind of emulate him and like a right, it's really great to find some sort of way to get there while leaning into the strength that I had, which would bring these guys into play, and that's kind of how it all started building into what is essentially my thing, like on Truth and Lie, For the Queen, Junktown. All of those kind of, you can see it in action, you know. And if I want a different texture, I can just lean into the pick, you know. And it's a totally different kind of flavor than the other things, and I think that's really, you know, where I found my voice in the game. So when I was finding my voice, obviously it started on a traditional Fender Telecaster that my parents bought me. It was blue with a white pick guard, which I rarely play blue guitars, and that was the first one. And while I do really think that Leo made plenty of magic, there were certain shortcomings that I found didn't really work for me. And one was the heel joint. A traditional Telecaster or Telecaster style guitar has a blocky heel and the bolts are all 1, 2, 3, 4. And so when I would play in a childish region of the neck, where you make your money down here and you have your fun up here, right? When I would play up here, I noticed that the heel of the guitar would just push me. And it wouldn't even be about playing way up in here. It would be playing, you know, G. I could feel that thing kind of getting after me. If I went any higher than that, it was like, oh man, this thing's kind of telling me stop being a kid, go back down here and make more money, live down here, right? So that was one of the shortcomings. And I started like just listing things that I would want. My style incorporates switching a lot of sounds very often. Like in one song, I may have a sound that's and in that same song, I may end up, you know, so I noticed not only with having pedals, that wasn't enough. Like I'm a firm believer that the instrument does most of the heavy lifting. The hands, and then the instrument reacts to the hands. So I was on tour, and I was begging. I'd been working with John Suhr a little bit, and playing his guitars. I was playing moderns because they have a beautiful heel joint that's all carved back, and they had a lot of switching that I liked. But I would also play my old tellies. I have old Fender tellies, and finally I was just like, man, what if we just kind of smushed things together? And it was funny because John thought I was nuts. He was like, man, I don't know about all that. You know, he's like, we'll make one for you. So that ended up being this black prototype. And this is the results of that prototype and my playing. And I think it was a good marriage because when he made that prototype, he got it right, like the first try. I said, you see the back of modern? You know, I flipped it over and it had this heel joint. He's like, let's take that, put it on that, you know? And like, he's like, I don't know, maybe. So we do it and it came out awesome because I wasn't looking to make a signature guitar. I wasn't looking to sell guitars. I was looking to problem solve. And within, like I said, within one song, I'm jumping around. You know, when you're in the studio, you can pick up, you know, a Les Paul or a Strat or whatever and stop the recording, retune everything for it. But if you're playing in one song and you want to jump from different sounds, like a Stratier kind of sound. Let me go to a clean tone. I'll just demo everything on a clean tone. If you want to go from a Stratier type of sound, but in that same song, I have a section that's a pretty big jump, right? So I do love single coils, but we started with the humbuckers. And it was because of that very reason. Another thing that I said, man, let's put a split on the back humbucker. He's like, you don't want a split. You want a series parallel. Well, me and my infinite wisdom thinking I knew everything. I was like, well, let's start with a split. So he's like, sure, puts the split in. He goes, now let's try it. Puts the series parallel in. I was like, oh, you're right. It's the series parallel. The great thing about the bridge pickup is this sounds like a nice humbucker. And with, does that convincingly. The great thing is, when you pull this up, it goes from here to here. So when I needed to emulate that thing, it's not 100%, right? It's not 100%, but in one song, I can simply go, milliseconds. You know, it's like that never interrupted the flow of the tune. And that was really important. So the biggest thing was when we came up with the Sir A-dub, it was about the hill joint. And then so I was like, well, let's just shave a little more out of the back. Again, it not being about playing, it's not about this, right? It was more about this hand. And it's at no point did I ever touch anything on the back of the guitar, and the guitar wasn't scolding me, telling me to go back down to the edge of the, back down here. Then it has what I would consider very standard fare Sir features: stainless steel frets, locking tuners, recessed tremolo. You could get this on a lot of Sirs. That doesn't really make it an Andy Wood thing, but it's really nice, especially when you're playing ballads, you know, and you have the that's the same guitar that's going, you know, over here. You know, it's doing all of those things. So the switching is neck pickup jazz stuff. And then just the single coil, you know. All that kind of stuff. Both humbuckers. The Stratty thing that's just the two inside coils, which we heard earlier. You know, kind of does that. And then the back humbucker. So really the biggest weapon in my arsenal or signal chain is the guitar itself, because if I just have one overdrive pedal and a Fender Twin, I can still get through it, right? Versus if I play a Les Paul, I'm just married to the sound of a Les Paul, which I do love. It's really great. It's a Les Paul, but you're just pigeonholed, and now the whole song has to be that sound, which for me, I like versatility. The evolution of this guitar was his more rugged older brother, which we came into with doing a traditional three-way, very simple, traditional country Nashville type of thing. However, I wanted the two sides of the ashtray shorn off, so when I'm hybrid picking or palm muting. The other thing was this pickup was really special. There's a really great story about how John had Les Paul, the guy, the human Les Paul. Leo had given him a Telecaster, and the pickup went out. John had to reverse engineer it. So when I came time to choose a pickup for my guitar, I like to not know anything about the pickups and just go on my ears. And we heard it, and it sounded so good, and I chose it. And he was like, oh, you're going to like the story behind that one. So he told me about where that kind of originated from, and how that ended up being in this guitar. And that just ended up being like a more specialized version of this. So when I go play somewhere, I can take these two guitars and be set. And if I have a session, I could take these two, a 335, and, you know, kind of cover some ground, and then keep building the arsenal from there. So yeah, this is a really interesting story, and it does a lot of things. I suggest you buy a lot of these. So obviously in my playing, there's no, hiding the fact that I like a lot of technical players. I like guys like Steve Morrison, Eric Johnson, and George Benson, and Brent Mason, Dan Huff, Landau. I like all the guys that do all the stuff. And a roadblock can be when you're working on technique. There's a new tune on my new album that requires a lot of facility, and it's called The Free Range Chicken. And the main part of the tune, it starts with an intro that's pretty adventurous. And the main head is and it keeps moving around that and playing with that idea. So the thing that is often asked about is right hand technique. I grew up listening to Eric Johnson, all those kind of licks, and really studying guys that had great facility, not really so much to impress people in the room, but it was just freedom of expression, right? So the thing that I think my advice would be, I never studied technique for technique's sake. It was all to serve a purpose. And playing bluegrass as a kid, songs would be they would require a lot of technique to solo. So it was learning technique to serve the purpose of the language of that music. And I would advise anyone who's working on anything. I worked on a lot of my favorite songs and trying to play them, but it was all under the context of studying the music. I never sat down and said, okay, I'm going to play arpeggiated exercises and then turn the metronome up one notch. One more notch. One more. I never it was like, what does that need to fit in? What music does that work in? That was the purpose of how I studied it. I would also say there's a difference in practicing something and learning something. When you're learning something, you kind of, what's the right note? Getting it under your fingers, right? And then when you really are practicing something, I don't really subscribe to the idea that you practice it slow. You learn music slow, but you practice it at the tempo, like at the tempo. And you need to play it at that speed. It feels a certain way to play something fast. That's not the same way it feels when I play. Look at how much motion there is in my hand. It's not the same thing. This hand's the same, but this hand's not the same. So when you're practicing, you learn it slow, but you practice it. If your goal is, maybe you need to practice it at speed and fix the problem. If you're getting stuck in the string, adjust something in a micro situation. Overholding the pick, something as simple as tightening the pick. Let me give you an example of that. This is if I'm relaxed. I'm not going to change anything. I'm only going to tighten my grip on the pick. So these muscles, squeezing that pick, prevents the pick from flowing through the strings. So it's a bit like discovering electricity or the light bulb or something. You're not figuring out one way to do it. You're discovering 10,000 ways that are wrong. And you delete those. You eliminate those from the equation until you fall in the right spot. And then when you feel it, you'll know if you can move your hand at speed. Like when I was playing the Jack Butler thing, that's not that fast. So on and so forth. Same with Too Many Notes was one, because it's not that fast. right? It's not that quick. Most people are trying to brute force it. You know, a lot of my way I play is about relaxation and mindset and how to get into the groove that I know the physics of my arm can do it. And not only do it, but be able to do it for 90 minutes and play a whole gig of that kind of music, right? That all comes from bluegrass. Play for hours, really fast tempos. So I think the technical advice I would say is, you know, learn it slow, practice it close to tempo, and then look for the right feeling in your arm. And I never suggest holding the pick a certain way or doing something a certain way, because Steve Morse played like this, right? Al Di Meola more like that. Like, everybody found a different way to solve the problem, but it was the way that felt comfortable.